Imagine buying your dream home. You saved for years. You signed the papers. You got the keys. And then, 6 months later, you get a letter in the post telling you that you owe thousands of pounds for a property you already own. Not rent, not a mortgage payment, a charge. A charge you never fully understood when you signed. A charge that can go up whenever someone else decides it should. And if you don't pay, they can take your home. Welcome to the leasehold scandal that is quietly destroying the lives of millions of people across the United Kingdom. And nobody is talking about it loudly enough. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what leasehold is, why it is one of the most controversial and unfair housing systems in the entire world, and what is actually being done, or not being done, to fix it. This is NestPath UK, and this might be the most important property video you watch this year. Let's start at the very beginning, because this is where most people get confused, and honestly, where most people get taken advantage of. When you buy a property in England and Wales, you are not always buying what you think you are buying. There are two types of ownership in the UK housing system. The first is freehold. Freehold means you own the property and the land it sits on. Outright. Forever. No one above you. No one collecting fees from you. You are the king or queen of your own little castle. The second type is leasehold, and this is where the story gets complicated, and for millions of people, genuinely devastating. When you buy a leasehold property, you are not buying the building or the land. You are buying the right to live in it for a fixed number of years. That could be 99 years. That could be 125 years. That could be 999 years. But here's the thing that most first-time buyers simply do not realize until it is far too late. There is someone above you, a landlord. And in the world of leasehold, they are called the freeholder. And the freeholder holds enormous power over your home, even though you paid hundreds of thousands of pounds for it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, 125 years is a long time. Why should I care? Here is why. And this is the part that will genuinely shock you. Leasehold properties come with something called service charges. These are fees you pay to the freeholder or a managing agent for the upkeep of communal areas. Fine in theory, right? Shared staircases need cleaning. Lifts need servicing. Gardens need maintaining. But in practice, these service charges have become one of the biggest financial traps in the British housing market, because there is almost no cap on how high they can go. Freeholders can charge whatever they want, and leaseholders, people who already own their homes, have almost no power to challenge it. We have spoken to people on this channel and across the NestPath UK community who have seen their service charges double in a single year. People paying $3,000, $5,000, even $8,000 a year on top of their mortgage for services they have never seen delivered properly. And when they try to complain, when they try to question the invoices, they are hit with legal fees, administration fees, communication fees, fees for the fees. It sounds like a dark joke. It is not. This is real life for over 4 million leasehold households in England alone. But wait, because it gets worse. Let me tell you about ground rent. Ground rent is a payment leaseholders make to the freeholders simply for the right to occupy the land their home sits on. For decades, ground rents were small, a few pounds a year, symbolic almost. But in the early 2000s, something changed. Developers, and the investment companies behind them, realized that ground rents were an extraordinary financial opportunity. So they started building ground rent escalation clauses into leasehold contracts, doubling ground rents every 10 years, every 5 years in some cases. What started as $250 a year becomes $500, then $1,000, then $2,000, then $4,000. And here is the truly terrifying part. A property with a high or escalating ground rent becomes unmortgageable. Banks will not lend on it, which means you cannot sell it. You are trapped in a home you own that you cannot leave. Pause for a second and let that sink in. 4 million people in the UK are living in properties they technically own, but with conditions attached that give a distant, often faceless corporation the power to charge them endlessly, restrict what they can do with their home, and in extreme cases, remove them from it. This is not a minor administrative quirk. This is a structural injustice baked into the legal foundations of British property law, and it has been going on for centuries. Here at NestPath UK, we believe that understanding the system is the first step to protecting yourself from it. So let us go a little deeper, because the history of leasehold explains a lot about why it is so hard to fix. Leasehold as a concept dates back to feudal England. We are talking about a system that was designed in the medieval period, when lords owned land and ordinary people were permitted to use it in exchange for payments and obligations. The lord held power. The tenant had very little. Now fast forward to 2024 and the structure is remarkably similar. The names have changed. The language is different. But the power dynamic? Largely the same. Freeholders, often large investment funds, aristocratic estates, or property companies, hold the land. Leaseholders pay, again and again, for years, for decades. Britain is almost unique in the developed world for clinging to this system. In Scotland, leasehold for residential properties was actually abolished in 2004. Yes, Scotland looked at the same system England has and said this is not fair and got rid of it. In most of Europe, in Australia, in Canada, in the United States, the concept of buying a home and then continuing to owe money to a separate landowner simply does not exist in the way it does in England and Wales. We are, in the most uncomfortable way possible, an outlier, and the people paying the price are ordinary families who just wanted to own a home. Now, let us talk about what has been happening politically, because this is where things get really interesting and honestly a little frustrating. The pressure to reform leasehold has been building for years, and the government has responded, at least in words. The leasehold reform, ground rent. Act 2022 was a significant moment. It made ground rent on new residential leases illegal, meaning that any new leasehold property created after the Act came into force cannot charge ground rent. A genuine step forward. A genuine victory for campaigners and the millions of people who have been fighting for change. But, and this is a critical but, that law does nothing for existing leaseholders. The 4 million people already trapped in leasehold properties with escalating ground rents, excessive service charges, and restrictive covenants, they are still there, still paying, still trapped. The 2022 Act closed the door on future victims but left current ones behind. The Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024 went further. It introduced new rights for leaseholders, including making it easier and cheaper to extend your lease or buy your freehold outright. It put restrictions on what freeholders can charge in service fees. It extended the right to manage, meaning leaseholders in a building can take over management of their block without needing to buy the freehold. These are meaningful reforms, real progress on paper. But here at NestPath UK, we have to be honest with you. The gap between what the law says and what leaseholders actually experience on the ground is still enormous. Enforcement is weak, legal challenges are expensive, and freeholders have teams of lawyers. Ordinary leaseholders often do not. Reform is happening, but slowly, and not fast enough for the people who are suffering right now. Let us talk about some of the human stories, because statistics are powerful, but people are more powerful. There are families across the Midlands, London, the Southeast, who bought flats in new build developments in the 2010s, attracted by low prices and the promise of modern living. They were not told, clearly, that the ground rent would double every decade. They were not told that the service charges were essentially unregulated. They were not told that extending their lease in 20 years would cost them tens of thousands of pounds. They bought their homes in good faith, and many of them are now in financial situations they simply cannot escape. Some have walked away from their properties entirely, taking the hit on their credit score and their savings, because the ongoing costs made staying impossible. These are not irresponsible people. These are not people who made stupid decisions. These are teachers, nurses, engineers, young families who trusted that the system protecting them was fair. And it was not. And this brings us to the developers. Because we cannot talk about the leasehold scandal without talking about the role that major house builders have played in creating it. For many years, it was standard practice among UK developers to sell new-build houses, not flats houses, on a leasehold basis, not for any practical reason. Not because it was necessary, but because selling the freehold separately to an investment company and retaining ground rents created a secondary income stream. A financial product built on top of people's homes. Think about that. Your family home. The place you raised your children, the place you plan to grow old, packaged up as an investment vehicle for someone else's profit. Some of the biggest names in British house building were doing this. And it took years of campaigning, journalism, and political pressure before the practice was widely acknowledged as the scandal it is. The government eventually stepped in, but the damage was done for hundreds of thousands of families. So, what should you do if you are a leaseholder right now? What are your actual options? Because that is what this channel is about. Not just explaining problems, but helping you navigate them. The first thing you should do is read your lease. It sounds obvious, but an extraordinary number of leaseholders have never actually sat down and read the full document. Find your ground rent clause. Find your service charge provisions. Find any restrictions on alterations, subletting, or pets. Know exactly what you signed. Second, investigate lease extension. As a leaseholder, you have a legal right to extend your lease by 90 years if you have owned the property for at least 2 years. This is crucial, because when a lease falls below 80 years, the cost of extending it rises dramatically, and mortgage lenders become very nervous. Do not leave this until you are in trouble. Get advice early. The NestPath UK community has resources and recommendations for specialist lease extension solicitors who genuinely know what they are doing. Third, look into the right to manage. If you live in a block of flats and the management is poor or charges are excessive, you may be able to take over management of the building yourself with other leaseholders without buying the freehold. This gives you direct control over service charges and who maintains the building. Fourth, consider buying your freehold. Known as collective enfranchisement, if a majority of leaseholders in a building agree, you can club together and buy the freehold from the freeholder. It requires legal advice and upfront costs, but it is the most powerful thing a group of leaseholders can do, because once you own the freehold, the ground rents stop. The service charges are under your control. You are truly the owner of your home. And fifth, stay informed. Because this area of law is changing rapidly, the reforms that have already been introduced are significant. More are likely coming. The political pressure has not gone away. Campaigning groups like the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership and the National Leasehold Campaign have done extraordinary work in pushing this issue into the mainstream. And channels like NestPath UK are here to translate the legal and political developments into real practical guidance for real people. Because here is the truth, and we will end on this. The leasehold scandal is not just a property issue. It is not just a legal quirk. It is a story about power, about who holds it, who is denied it, and how systems that were designed centuries ago continue to shape the lives of millions of ordinary people today. The people who created and benefited from leasehold abuse did not do it in secret. They did it in plain sight, within the law, because the law allowed it, and because most buyers did not know enough to protect themselves. That is exactly why NestPath UK exists, to make sure you know, to make sure you go into the property market with your eyes wide open, to make sure that when you buy your home, your real home, the one you worked so hard for, you understand exactly what you are buying, what your rights are, and how to protect them. If this video opened your eyes, if you learned something today that you did not know before, please hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps more people find this content, people who need it. Drop a comment below and tell me, are you a leaseholder? Have you been affected by this? What has been your experience? I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to hear from you. And if you are not subscribed to NestPath UK yet, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Because we are covering the UK housing market like no one else. New videos every week, real information, real advice, no fluff. This is NestPath UK, and we will see you in the next one.